All right, couple things I want to talk to you about just from the very get. All right, if a question says to leave your answer in terms of pi, that means you'll have pi in your answer, like the pi symbol. If it says to round to a certain decimal place, that means you should have a decimal in your answer. If you simplify something, like if you guys have 17, say 17 pi over 3, right? That is simplified. If it says no decimals, then you can't do 17 divided by 3 and tell me it's 5.6666. That's not, I'm taking points off. That is not correct. If it says no decimals, that just means you can use your calculator to simplify, but you absolutely have to not have decimals. You have to keep it in fraction form. You're going to have questions that just tell you something like the cosine of theta is greater than 0. And tangent is greater than 0. Right? Well, what does that mean, right? All students take calculus. You look at the first statement. That first statement will help you eliminate 2 quadrants. If cosine is greater than 0, that means it's what? Positive, all right? So in quadrant 1, everything is positive, right? In quadrant 2, sine and it's reciprocal, so it's not there. In quadrant 3, it's tangent and it's reciprocal, so not there. And in quadrant 4, cosine's positive, all right? So now you take the second statement, and that is going to help you figure out which of the 2 left over, where the angle falls. If tangent is greater than 0, that means tangent is what? Positive. With what is left over? Where is tangent positive? In quadrant 1, A. So you'll have a question or two where all you're doing is telling me quadrants 1, 2, 3, or 4. But the way that you do that is you take the first statement, eliminate 2 of the quadrants, then the second statement will help you narrow it down whether of the 2. All right? That makes sense? You guys absolutely have to know the trig functions. You have to know that sine of theta is y over r. Cosine theta is x over r. Tangent theta is y over x. If you know those, then you can figure out the reciprocals. The reciprocals of sine is cosecant, so it's r over y. The reciprocal of cosine is secant, so it's r over x. And the reciprocal of tangent is cotangent, so it would be x over y. I'm not going to ask you for all 6 trig functions. I might ask you for 2 of them. You need to know what they are, how to find them, all that stuff. We're going to go over some questions. But remember, yeah. How many questions? 14. Remember, if you are starting a question off in radians, Sure. If you're starting a question off in radians, your answer should be in what? Radians. If you start an answer in degrees, your answer should be in degrees. It's important. They're going to have different types of questions. You'll have 14. Some of them are real quick. You don't have to take a lot of time. Some of them take a little longer. But if you're converting, you need to remember the conversions. It's either going to be pi over 180 or 180 over pi, depending upon what you start with and where you're going. So if I look at number 1, I'm starting in what? I'm starting in radians, so I'm going to degrees. Now, you guys are allowed to use your calculator for simplification purposes, but I need to see some work. I need to see that you understand, okay, I'm starting in radians, so then pi should go on the bottom and 180 should go on the top. I need you to show me that you realize, oh, wait, the pi's cancel. Now, 5 goes into 5 one time. Here you can use your calculator and say 180 divided by 5 gives me 36. If all you do is just start off with this problem and then give me an answer, I'm taking points off. I did it the last time you guys had a calculator part of the test. If you don't show me your thought process and your work, you're not getting full credit. The calculator is just to make things a little faster. So here I say 36 times -7, and I get what? Negative, that's a major part of your answer, 252 what? Degrees. That is a major part of your answer as well. If the angle is negative, there needs to be a negative sign in front of it. If you're going to degrees, you have to have a degree symbol. All right, look at number 2. Just kind of survey the situation.
Multiplying instead of like canceling.
Yeah, you can multiply across and then cancel that way. That's fine. But in this case, I'm starting off in radians, so I'm going to degrees. So I'm going to put pi on the bottom and 180 on the top. What Bella just asked, can you do this? All right, can pi's cancel? Yeah. And then can you say 180 times 2, which is 360, and then divide that by 5? Sure. Now, guys, if this was like 365 and it did not work out to be a whole number when you divide, you have to leave it in its simplified fraction form. It explicitly says on the quiz, no decimals. So if you divide 360 by 5, you get how much? So this would be 72 what? Degrees. Okay, that's fine. What do you notice about 3? Wherever it went. There it is. We're starting off in degrees, so we're going to radians, all right? So that degree symbol should be out of my answer. So I have 180 on the bottom and pi on top. I know that 5 goes into both of those. 5 goes into 180 36 times. 5 goes into 645. How many times? 129. All right, so I'm left with 129 pi over 36. Is that simplified? No. Some of you are like, how'd you know that? Add up the numbers in 129. Or the digits. What's 9 plus 2?
18.
9 plus 2.
Oh.
11 plus 1 is 12. Does 3 go into 12?
Yes.
Yes, so that means 3 will go into 129. So 3 goes into 129 43 times. And 3 goes into 36 how many times?
12.
Is that now simplified? Yes. There's absolutely no excuse for not having simplified answers, especially since we're letting you guys use calculators. Super important, okay? The window's open. All right, look here. What do you guys notice about this one? It's negative. Okay, no big deal. That just means I have to have a negative in my answer. It's also way bigger than one circle, right? But that's okay. We can still convert. I know that, again, 5 goes into 180 36. We've done that like 3 times already. And then 1205 divided by 5 gives me 241. Is 241 divided by 3? 4 plus 2 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. Nope. So my answer here would be negative 241 pi over 36. Do not divide negative 241 divided by 36 and give me the decimal because it's going to be marked wrong. Make sure you guys are aware of that, okay? Questions on converting. All right, another thing that you guys have to know is your rule for reference angles. You have to know all of these. Notice the only numbers that we use with reference angles are 180 and 360, whatever's on the x-axis. Your reference angle is formed with the terminal side of the angle and the x-axis. So it's either 180 minus, 360 minus, or angle minus 180. But what are the two things your reference angles will always be? They'll be acute. What does that mean? Less than 90. So acute and positive. Every single time you find a reference angle, say to yourself, is this acute? Is it positive?
What about when it's like a degree is
I'll go over. Your reference angle will always be positive. Okay, so there's different scenarios here. First of all, you guys have no idea where 16 pi over 5 is. My answer, I have to have in radians because I'm starting off in radians. But what should we convert to so we can see this a little better? Let's go to degrees, okay? That's fine. Pi on the bottom, 180 on the top. Again, 5 into 180. I don't know, when I was making this, I kept putting the same numbers. But 5 goes into 5 once, and 5 goes into 180 36 times, and my pi cancels. So here I have 36 times 16, and I get 576. Guys, that's the angle that I'm dealing with. That's the theta that they gave me. What do you notice about 576? It's larger than a whole circle. In order to find a reference angle, you need something that's between 0 and 360. So if I subtract 360 here, what's 576 minus 360? 216. Okay, that is the angle that you're using as theta. Some of you yesterday on WebAssign are like, why does this keep marking it wrong? Well, think about it, guys. A reference angle has to be two things. It has to be acute. Is 216 acute? No, so that should give you an idea of like, oh wait, that's not right. But where is 216? Draw yourself a little picture. Here's 90, 180, 270. It's going to be over here somewhere, right? In between 180 and 270. So what is the rule for quadrant 3? You're going to say the angle minus 180. So 216 minus 180, and you get what? 36 degrees. Check that. Is that acute? Is it positive? What's the one last thing I need to do? I got to go back. I started off in radians. I need to end in radians. So then 180 is on the bottom here, and pi is on the top. Now again, if you just divide 36 divided by 180 and get a decimal, that's not the answer. 36 goes into 36 once. 36 goes into 180. So your reference angle is pi over 5. If the question says leave your answer in terms of pi, that's what that means. A pi will be in your answer. Very important. All right, scooting along, scooting along. I have a negative. Camila just brought this up. Well, first of all, we don't think in radians, and that's okay. So let's go ahead and convert this. Pi on the bottom, 180 on the top. Pi's will cancel. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 180, 60. So I end up here with negative 120 degrees. Okay, think about that. Negative 120 is a very different place on the graph or on a coordinate plane than positive 120. So if you have a negative number, that just means you started at the x-axis and went down instead of up. Go ahead and add 360 to it. You want a number between 0 and 360. So negative 120 plus 360 is what? Positive 240. Whoops. Negative 120 and positive 240 are the exact same angle. So now, okay, this is the angle I'm looking at. Here's 180. Here's 270. Where's 240? It's in quadrant 3 again, right? What was the rule for 3? Angle minus 180. So 240 minus 180 gives me 60. All right? 60 degrees. Is that acute? Is it positive? Okay. Can I leave my answer and go next? Why not? I have to convert it to radians. We started off in radians. We got to go back to radians. 60 goes into 60 once. 60 goes into 180 3 times. So your reference angle is pi over 3. Your calculator for this quiz is going to make things quicker. It is not going to make things a lot easier. It's just going to make your work a little faster. All right, let's look at number 7. Again, we're in radians. Let's go to degrees. So I have pi on the bottom, 180 on the top. What happens to my pi? Cancels. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 180, 60. So you have negative, remember, negative 28 times 60. I have negative 1,680 degrees. All right, what do you notice about that number? It's negative. Good. What else do you notice? It's way bigger than a circle. I'm going to go ahead and add 720 here. What's 360 and 360? 720. That's a big number, so I'm just going to go ahead and not waste time. So I'm going to add 2 circles. And I get negative 960. Well, we're still way bigger than a circle, right? I'm going to add another 2 circles. So plus 720 gives me negative 240. I'm still not between 0 and 360. So now I'm just going to add 1 circle. What's negative 240 plus 360? 120 degrees. All right. We have not found our reference angle yet. We just now know what theta is, what we're using now to find the reference. So give yourself a little picture. Here's 90 and here's 180. 120 is in which quadrant? Quadrant 2. What's the rule for 2? 180 minus theta. So 180 minus 120 gives me 60 degrees. Is that number acute? Yes. Is it positive? Yes. So we're good. Am I done? Is that my answer? Why not? Got to go back. Good. Got to convert. We're going to go here, 180 on the bottom, pi on top. 60 goes into 60 once. 60 goes into 180 3 times. So my reference angle, again, is pi over 3. Sometimes it works out nice and pretty. Sometimes it doesn't. Just make sure there's no decimals. Questions? All right, here's what I think would be the hardest thing on the quiz for a couple reasons. Not the math behind it. You guys can find a squared plus b or x squared plus y squared. You need to know these trig ratios. And you need to understand when you're given these trig ratios what they mean. All right, this first piece of information tells you a lot. When you have something, you don't have the picture of the triangle, so you don't know which one is the opposite, which one's the hypotenuse, which one's this, which one's that. You don't have a picture, you just have a ratio. You have to find your x, y, which is your legs, and your r is always your hypotenuse. What do we know about r? Always.
Positive.
Always positive. Always positive. Remember that. When you're given cosine, you're given the value of x and of r. So right away, you know what about x and r? X is 5 and r is 8. What do you know about that negative sign? Where does it go?
5.
It goes with the x. How did you know that? Well, because you know that r is never, ever negative. Another thing you need to do is you need to look at your all students take calculus. If cosine is negative, we can already cross off 2 quadrants where it's not. It's not in A, and it's not where else? In C. Good. You can go ahead now and find your y value if you wanted to. You could say, okay, well, I have negative 5 squared plus y squared equals 8 squared. So 25 plus y squared equals 64. Minus 25. Y squared is what? 39? So y is the square root of 39. Okay, great. But this second piece of information is really important. Yes, ma'am?
I thought cosine is positive and negative.
No. In quadrant 4, the signs are x is positive and y is negative. But in quadrant 4, cosine and its reciprocal function are positive. If the angle was in quadrant 4, that would be because your x value would be positive. This second piece of information tells you a lot right here. This says that tangent is what? Greater than 0. What does that mean? It's positive. So with what we have left over, where is tangent positive? In t. What do you know about the signs of x and y in t? They're both negative. So what do you know about this y value that you just found? It's negative. A lot of you yesterday on WebAssign, you're like, my numbers are right. Your number values were fine, but your signs were wrong. If you don't have the correct signs, then your answers are not right because they're in different places on your coordinate grid. So now once you figured out what the sign, like the x and y, the positive negative part is, the rest of this is easy. If I asked you to find the sign, you would take the y value, which is negative square root of 39, and you would put it over the r value, which is 8. Is that an acceptable answer? Yeah. Cosine is negative 5 over 8. That was given to you. Tangent's going to be y over x. So let's try this again. What is my y value, guys? It's negative square root of 39. What is the x value? Negative 5. 2 negatives give me a... Woo! Okay, it took me 4 times to do that. Now we're going to find the reciprocals. We flip. So I say, okay, this is going to be 8 over negative root 39. What's the problem there? The root in the bottom. So when you rationalize, this is going to become 8 square root 39 over 39. That negative can go anywhere. It can go at the top, the bottom, whatever. If the outside numbers, if that 8 and 39 broke down, simplified, you'd have to do that. They don't, so you're fine. What's my secant? When I flip my cosine, what does this become? Negative 8 over 5. Good. The 8 can be negative. It doesn't matter where you put the negative sign in the answer, just as long as it's there. And then when we flip here, what happens? I get negative 5 over negative root 39. Again, a negative divided by negative is a positive. So I have 5 root 39 over 39. And if the numbers outside in the numerator denominator cancel, then you can, or simplify, you can cancel them. All right, yesterday I made this correction when I was making my answer key for pre-cal on one of their formulas, it's cosine. We're doing something else, so I was just not thinking. So please make sure you make that change. I sent you guys a picture of it. I'm telling you right now in the video.
On here it says cotangent is also y over x instead of x over y.
Okay, just fix it. That's why we did at the beginning. We wrote them all down. And you guys have them in all of your notes, so make sure you have that. All right, this is a problem where some of you are going to lose credit because you're not paying attention. It's going to tell you how to round, and you need to have units. If you're talking about area, you have units. So you're going to be given two sides of a triangle and its included angle, just like that. Very, very simple, very straightforward. So you would say 15 times 5 times the sine of the angle that they gave you and divide it by 2. In this case, everybody do this with your calculator. Get some practice. 15 times 5. You okay, bud? Okay, times the sine of 30 divided by 2. You get 18.75. So the directions here say round to the nearest unit. So that means 18.75 would be what? 19. And then what is the unit that we're talking about? Inches, and it would be squared. Why is it squared? Because it's talking about area. Good. All right, look at number 2. Same thing. We have two sides, and it's included angle. So 4 times 7 times the sine of 10 divided by 2. Some of you need to do the whole numerator in your calculator. Hit enter, and then hit divided by 2. 4 times 7 times the sine of 10 divided by 2, and you get 2.43. Now this says round to the nearest square unit. So what's the closest whole number to 2.43? 2, and it would be what? Feet squared.
It was 18.75.
Yeah.
I was typing in 20 instead of 2.
Gotcha. No worries. That's okay. That's why we're practicing. All right. What does one positive and one negative coterminal angle mean? You're adding and subtracting 360 or 2 pi. One whole circle. Guys, you're adding or subtracting to the angle. It's not 2 pi minus. It's the angle minus. So in this case, guys, you have 423. I'm going to add 360 and I'm going to subtract 360. Very, very simple. What's 423 plus 360? 783. Okay, so that's a positive coterminal angle. What about if I say 423 minus 360? What do I get? God bless you. 63. Is that another positive coterminal angle? Yes. You could leave that as your answer. But you have to have one positive and one negative. So what am I going to do to get 63 to become negative? I have to subtract a whole nother circle. That's going to give me negative 297. There's a bunch of different answers for this question. But one answer has to be positive, one has to be negative. And the angle has to go first. You cannot say 360 minus. You have to say 423 minus. All right, look at number 72, 12. All right, we're finding coterminal. God bless you. Negative 197 plus 360. Negative 197. Camila, are you okay? Okay, just making sure, honey. So negative 197 plus 360. We're going to be in the exact same spot. The angle is the exact same thing. We just went one whole circle around. What did we end up with? 163 degrees. Is that a positive coterminal angle? Yes. So now I have 197 minus 360, and I end up with negative 557. Guys, the sign in front is important. Do you need help? Okay. The sign in front is important, and the degree measure is important. You have to have both of those things in order for your answer to be correct. Pay attention to the details. You sure, Bella?
Yeah, just like.
Sure. Move on to 13. No. That's why I took it off your website. What do you guys notice about 13? What are we starting off in? Radians, okay? We're going to still add and subtract one whole circle, but we're not going to use 360. We're going to use what value? 2 pi. So I'm going to start off with 7 pi over 3 plus 2 pi and 7 pi over 3 minus 2 pi. All right, so 2 pi over 1, 2 pi over 1, right? We need to get a common denominator. What's a common denominator between 3 and 1? 3. So if I multiply the bottom by 3, then I multiply the top by 3. 2 times 3 is 6. What's 7 plus 6? 13 pi over 3. Is that a positive number? Okay, you're good to go. Now we're going to subtract. Again, 3 is your common denominator. So multiply the bottom and top by 3. And here I get pi over 6. Wait, that's not negative. No, I don't know why I said that. I get pi over 3. I'm thinking about the next thing I'm going to do. Why is that a positive coterminal again? Yeah, you could use that as your positive coterminal. But I don't want 2 positives. I want 1 positive, 1 negative. So what do I need to do? I'm going to subtract another 2 pi. So when I do that, my common denominator becomes 3. Multiply the bottom, I get 6. There's my 6. And then I have 1 pi minus 6 pi gives me negative 5 pi over 3. Question?
Do we have to show like how the function was, or can we just subtract?
Meaning what?
Like how you just did all the 6s and 3s to cross them out, do we have to show that?
I mean, yeah, I don't want you to leave it as 2 pi over 1 and then all of a sudden you get pi over 3.
No, I mean like for work.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to, can you just switch the radians to degrees and time from there?
And then go back? Yeah. That's fine. That'll work. All right, what do you notice about this one? It's negative. Okay, so let's, again, negative 26 pi over 5. We're going to add 2 pi, and we're going to subtract 2 pi. Common denominator between 5 and 1. It's going to be 5. The whole time it's going to be 5. So this is 5. This is going to become 10. Negative 26 and 10 is negative 16 pi over 5. Is that a coterminal angle? Yes. It just happens to be what kind? A negative. You could use that as your negative coterminal. That's fine. I'm going to add another circle. It's 10 pi over 5. We already got the common denominator and all that. So I get negative 16 plus 10. I get negative 6 pi over 5. Is that another coterminal angle? Yes. It's just still negative. So that's fine. You could do all of your work here and find your negative and positive. That's fine. If you just want to always go with I always add and always subtract, that's fine as well. There's a bunch of different answers. But I have to add another 10 pi over 5 in order to get a positive. And then I end up with 4 pi over 5. Yep.
Can we like also like if you want to just grab one of those already negative as well?
Yeah, that's what I said. This could be a negative coterminal. That could be a negative.
So you don't have to do the negative now?
No, because of the way that the number is structured, it's not between 0 and 360. So adding and subtracting doesn't give you just one positive or negative.
Negative 16 pi over 5.
That could be your negative. Yep. Yeah, you could use this one as a negative. You could use this one as a negative. That's fine. But some people just like to always start off and go, okay, I'm going to add every time. And that's fine if you want to do that. This would be over 5. This would be 10. This would be negative 36 pi over 5. Again, there's a bunch of different answers for this kind of a question. As long as it mathematically is one positive, one negative, and it's an exact circle around, you're good. You are good. All right. Last bit. All right. This one is fairly simple. Why is this one a little easier than the other one? You don't have to worry about quadrants. You don't have to worry about it. They gave you a picture and they said, look, here, God bless you, is theta. I know this is a right triangle because I have a little box in the corner. So in regards to theta, what is 6? It's the hypotenuse. Good. What is the square root of 5? It's the opposite. So what are you going to try and find? You're finding the adjacent. This is the exact same problem as the x, y, and r. Just this case, you don't have to worry about signs because it's always in the first quadrant because they gave you the picture. So adjacent, we don't know, and our hypotenuse is 6. So to find, we say a squared plus b squared equals, yep, plus So 5 plus b squared equals 36. B squared equals 31. So my adjacent is the square root of 31. Again, if you could rationalize, you need to. But all of these are positive. You don't have to worry about that. You're given a picture. You don't have to worry about signs and what quadrant it's in and all that. So now you just go through and we find all of our trig functions. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite is the square root of 5 over the hypotenuse, which is 6. My cosecant would be 6 over the square root of 5. And then we have to fix it. So it would be 6 square root of 5 over 5. Cosine would be adjacent, square root of 31 over hypotenuse, which is 6. So secant would be 6 over the square root of 31. And we have to do what? We got to fix it. So it would be 6 square root of 31 over 31. Here's the problem that I was thinking of earlier. So my tangent is opposite over adjacent, right? So it's the square root of 5 over the square root of 31. If we're going to fix that, guys, you're going to rationalize it's the square root of 31. A house times a house is just a what? It's a bigger house. So what is 31 times 5? What is it? 31 times 5? 155. So it's the square root of 155. If that breaks down, you need to do it. If it doesn't, no worries. Over 31. And then we're going to come over here and do the same thing. We're going to do the cotangent. Well, that's just flipped. It's the square root of 31 over the square root of 5. Again, you got to fix it. Rationalize with the square root of 5. And you get the square root of 155 over 5. Can you cross off any 5s in the numerator and denominator there? Why not?
Because that's under a square root.
Yes, because one is under the square root and one is not. All right, one more. Again, area of the sector is not going to be on here. We're going to do that next week. We have 2 sections to do next week. You don't have any tests or quizzes next week. We're going to get, hold on, I'm almost, do you have a question or you want to go to the bathroom? Wait a second, let me finish. I have one more thing to do, and then leave your calculator so I can look at it. All right, arc length. Anybody remember the formula for arc length? Close. S equals R times theta. R is your radius. Theta is your central angle. And S is the arc length. So all you do, guys, is you fill in the information you have and you solve for what you're looking for. They might give you the angle and the arc length, and you have to find the radius. They might give you the arc length and the central or radius. You have to find the central angle, whatever. But what is important about that central angle? It has to be in what? In radians. Good. God bless you. Has to be in radians. God bless you.
Wait, what?
The central angle. So when they tell you that the radius is 7, okay, that's cool. And they tell you that the central angle is 145 degrees. Some of you are just going to say 7 times 145 and then give me an answer. And I'm going to tell you it's wrong. What do I have to do with 145? You have to convert it. You've got to go to radians. So when you do this, again, if it says no decimals, if it says leave your answer in terms of pi, then you have to, 90% of the time, you're going to have a fraction. Don't tell me, oh, it doesn't reduce. It does reduce, guys. It just isn't pretty. This becomes 29 pi over 36. So you have to read the directions. If your answer, if it says keep answers in terms of pi, this would be 7 times 29 pi over 36. So you would multiply 7 times 29 is 203 pi over 36. What are we measuring? Arc length. So it's centimeters. The length of the arc. If it says round to the nearest, what does that mean your answer should be? No. If you're rounding, If you're rounding, what does that mean your answer is probably going to look like? A decimal. So if you were going to have a decimal answer here, you would say 203 times pi, and then divide that by 36, and you get 17.7. So read the directions. Don't come up to me and say, what did you want us to do here? I'm going to tell you to read the directions.
And how did you do it?
Just 203 times pi divided by 36. So this is in terms of pi. That means, ooh, keep pi in my answer. If it tells you no decimals, no decimals. Don't change the fraction. If it says to round to the nearest, then there you go.
Can you do more like this?
Like another one? Okay, so given the angle is 125 degrees, and your radius is no, I'm not going to do that. Your radius is 4 meters. So you would say 4 times, I have to change this into radians. So 125 divided by 5 is 25, and this is 36. So your angle would be 25 pi over 36. This is over 1, right? So it would be 100 pi over 36 meters, if it was in terms of pi. If it was a decimal, you would take 100 and times it by pi, and then divide it by 36, and get 8.7. So just depending upon how they tell you to answer the question. Yep. Okay, we good?